Hi, I'm Esther.
And I'm Shaun.
I write about AI news here at Tech Target.
And I edit Esther's stories.
We're here to talk to tech experts about everything AI, from open and closed models to AI agents and who's ahead in the generative AI race.
And even the elusive AGI.
We've got it covered, right, Shaun?
Yep, we've got it covered.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Targeting AI podcast from Informer Tech Target. Shaun, Sutner, and I are back with another episode. This time, we are joined by Arun Subramaniyan, founder and CEO of Articulate, a generative AI platform vendor. Before Articulate, Arun was the vice president of cloud and AI strategy at Intel. And before then, he was the head of machine learning at AWS. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Esther and Shaun.
Okay, so great to have you on. So you transitioned from vice president at Intel's data center and AI group to founding Articulate. What led you to make this leap, and how has your experience at Intel shaped your vision for Articulate? And if you could also say what you see as Articulate's mission and what you mostly do. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, tons of questions there. Let me unpack there. So, in fact, founding story for Articulate really came from us trying to solve a business problem for a large customer. Really, the experience that I had in Amazon is really what led me to my stint at Intel, which then followed on to Articulate. We actually incubated the idea for Articulate for about 18 months inside Intel before we actually launched the company. And the idea really was that we can actually help enterprises solve some of their largest data challenges using generative AI in a way that was not possible before. And this started really with my journey when I was in Amazon, where we were building the largest GPU clusters and helping some of the companies that were early in the Gen AI market build some of the largest models out there. And that followed on to Intel, where we built the largest AI supercomputer, and we convinced a customer to give us their data so we could build a large model for them and deploy that back into their environments. It was really more for knowledge discovery and then generating new content. And this was before ChatGPT. So it was not obvious that these models could actually add value to enterprises. And so we had to build the model and deploy it. We went to production November 2022, a month before ChatGPT was launched. And then the ChatGPT launched actually gave enterprises everywhere a reason for them to go experiment with technologies like generative AI. And it's not just experimenting, but also doing it with their data set that they've invested a lot in, but not being able to get the outcomes that they thought they're going to get for various reasons, mostly because they had to put in a lot of, AI talent to not only extract meaningful information from their data, but also continue to have the same talent in deployment for eternity to get those models to be useful. And the mission for Articulate really is to get complex, messy data that's already being collected by enterprises worldwide into applications in production as quickly as possible, right? And doing it in, domains where the knowledge of the domain or the industry is critical for you to go do applications, right? And today you asked what's the mission for Articulate. Our mission really is to enable our customers to solve their most complex business problems with the data that they already have and the know-how they have, but in a way that requires a lot of synthesis as they go around doing it, right? And the way we do it also is slightly different, where we, from the beginning, almost our founding times, understood deeply that no one model is going to help enterprises solve their problems. It's really a combination of models coming together, working together in sync autonomously to get you to your outcomes. And the combination of models have to be a combination of general purpose models and domain specific models working together. So it's really that spectrum of work that we take on behalf of our customers to actually go deliver value.
That's very interesting. You have a background in aerospace engineering and have taken roles at AWS, GE, and Intel. How have these different experiences influenced your approach to AI leadership?
So I would say I can't be doing my job today without having the experiences that I've had over the years, starting at GE and then getting to Amazon and then at Intel as well. The reason I say that is AI has always been a necessity for me, not a do it because it's a cool technology. What I mean by that is when we started with AI now almost 20 years ago, it is really around trying to solve a complex problem where it was a lot of data analysis required and a lot of physics required that had to come together. And that mixed with high performance computing that we had access to is really what got to a lot of deep learning applications and industrial applications, which got to helping people build the largest computers and supercomputers in the world. In fact, when I was in Amazon, I led the team that ran the fastest top 500 supercomputer run for the first time in a production cloud without having a specialized data center. It hasn't been done before, and it hasn't been done since. When we did that, it was 2021, and it was the 39th fastest supercomputer in the world. And the reason why those experiences shaped what we do today at Articulate is it's around helping customers solve their biggest scale problems. It's not about doing a demo, but doing it at scale, but also doing it at a cost profile where the total cost of ownership for the customer is the lowest possible. So the return on investment for the customer, where I've actually been on the other side most of my career, where I had to actually justify what is the return on the investment and actually only use technology that helped us move the needle, is really what helps us deliver that to our customers, where it's not just the specialized teams. Every customer, every enterprise can actually take advantage of it.
Okay, so Articulate emerged from Intel. Can you please explain the core technology behind your Gen AI platform in the enterprise AI market? Like, what specific enterprise problems is Articulate best positioned to address that other Gen AI systems can't address effectively?
Absolutely. So the core technology behind Articulate is what we call model mesh. And that underlies the actual philosophy that we started with, which is no one model is going to get you to your outcome. You really need a combination of models to work together. So think of model mesh as a decision layer that is not just deciding which models to orchestrate, but also deciding based on what the question or the task the user is asking for, and break that down real time and decision and reason real time as you're going in. Right, that's the core technology that we built and we've been scaling. Today, agents have become popular, but think of model mesh as an agent of agents. It's multiple agents working together in sync at runtime, and it's actually reasoning every single time in terms of what needs to happen. And in terms of use cases, really it's around two large classes of use cases that I would focus on. The first class is what we call knowledge discovery, which is you have a complex collection of data, whether it is structured, unstructured, text, images, tables, like say time series information, all of it coming in. How do you take that raw unprocessed data set, and today you can think of it as a data lake, but really what's ended up happening in most enterprises is it's a data swamp, and most enterprises end up struggling to get to useful value from that, and it's really trying to extract meaningful information from that and synthesize it. What I mean by synthesis is when you ask a question for which the answer doesn't exactly reside in your data, you have to actually analyze it, synthesize it, mix it up before getting to an answer. That's what we do really, really well. Right? I'll give you an example. Even a simple question like, say, what is the investment profile of Tesla compared to their competitors in North America? And give me a comparison based on earnings to investment in R&D over the last 3 months. Now, the question might seem simple, and it might also seem like, well, you can just go read a bunch of reports and then you can get the answer to it. But the exact answer to the question doesn't exist in any report. You need to read multiple reports, each of those reports might have the data in different formats, meaning some companies report it in dollars, some of them report in yen, some of them might report in as percentage of their total earnings. So you need to be able to extract all that, normalize it, and then give the user an answer. And not only give an answer, but when you're giving an answer, actually give the full provenance of where each piece of information came from, why you made a decision to actually use one piece of information over another, and then what is the quality as you're giving an answer, right? Now, usually, if you ask your analyst to do this, they will actually go do all that, generate a report. It may take them some time. We do that real time, right? That's what I mean by synthesis. That's the first set of use cases. And most of the industries we focus on are large scale B2B financial services, manufacturing, automotive, energy, oil and gas, aerospace, say telecommunications. It's really around large scale industrial use cases plus financial services at the B2B level, right? That's one bucket. The second bucket is what I would call as driving action. So it is an intelligent co-pilot or an intelligent agent with you in terms of doing knowledge discovery plus acting on that knowledge discovery. So I'll give you a manufacturing example. So it's a technician co-pilot. So you are in a semiconductor manufacturing plant. Each piece of equipment is tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars worth. They're generating anywhere from a few thousand to tens of thousands of events on a daily basis. It's a technician who is highly skilled, who has to look at them and make sure that the tool doesn't go down, but also they don't miss anything that is a false positive or a false negative. Now imagine an agent that actually sits there, analyzes all of this, knows the history, can figure out differences between what is coming in from a time series data set, what the technician is saying in their comments, and then say these are the high value events to go after, and this is the action they need to take. The action part is important, and then the technician is the human in the loop who says, okay, I like this action, go ahead and do it. That's the second piece that we do really well, especially in environments where the stakes are very high. The stakes for making a mistake is very, very high. Like a wrong call might be several $1 million a day for a semiconductor manufacturing plant. So those two buckets are really what we do really well.
So I want to talk a little bit about being you described your platform as hardware agnostic, despite being optimized for Intel architecture. How do you navigate this balance, and what advantage does this approach offer to enterprise customers?
Yes. So really what we mean by hardware agnostic is that because we run inside the customer security perimeter, our software has to be optimized to whatever infrastructure the customer has. So it might be an NVIDIA GPU set that they have from a generation ago, or it could be an AMD M350, or it could be an Intel accelerator that they have in their environment. Our product actually, as far as we know, is the only one that works across the entire ecosystem. So we can actually deploy inside, and it not only works, it also is optimal for their infrastructure. Right? So that means that we have to optimize our models, our software to make sure that it's working efficiently inside the customer security perimeter. That's really what we mean by agnostic. Of course, we also run on Amazon, AWS, we run on Azure, and we also run on Google Cloud. It's really the ability for us to deploy the same software across a variety of clouds and a variety of accelerators that gives the advantage to the customer. It's a lot of additional work on our side, but it's the advantage to the customer.
Okay, so going back to the security perimeter, you mentioned that, and so you work with enterprise data. I mean, how do you actually do that? How do you keep customer data within the perimeter? And why is this so important for your what you do with enterprises?
Perfect question, right? So the first thing we do is to make sure that we do not train any of our models with customer data. So it's not like we are training our models with the customer data set. We don't learn anything. But the way we do that is our entire software is deployed inside the customer security perimeter. So for example, if the customer is running on AWS inside their own, what they would call a virtual private cloud, our product runs inside the customer's virtual private cloud. So it's not like we have a model deployed on our side and then they use our model outside. Everything is deployed inside, and a customer is the one actually deploying. We are not hands-on keyboard inside the customer's environment. That's one. And the other thing is, as the customer starts using it, they're ingesting their data, they're starting to use the product. Everything is running inside their environment. So whether it is on-prem on their own data center or in a public cloud, but inside their own virtual environment in the public cloud, nothing comes back to us. So even a feedback, the customer has to choose to send it directly back to us. Unless they send that back, we're not going to get anything. So that's how we make sure that that is completely secure. The reason why it's important is we are dealing with the crown jewel of data sets inside most of these enterprises. We're dealing with their core of operations. We are not dealing with their, say HR department or legal department or marketing department. 100% of our use cases are focused on the core of the business's operation. And that data set is usually typically never shared outside. And that's something that we actually help customers continue to secure without actually sending it out anywhere. It's our software going to their data, it's not their data coming to our software.
Can I just ask a follow up quickly to that? And that, how do you keep that bridge, right? Of like making sure there's no data leakage.
So the easiest thing for us to make sure that there is no data leakage is making sure that nothing comes back to us. There is no connection back to what I would call a mothership. So the deployment actually is done by the customer's engineers. And once the deployment is done, there is no connectivity. And the way we know that there is no connectivity is we are actually the only ones, as far as I know, deployed inside completely air-gapped environments. So the semiconductor manufacturer I mentioned is running inside a manufacturing facility in Phoenix where there is no internet connectivity.
As someone who's worked on AI at both large tech companies and now a focused startup within Intel, how do you see the competitive landscape evolving between tech giants and specialized AI vendors?
I mean, in many ways, this is the most opportunity space that we've ever seen, but that means that it's the most competitive space that probably anybody has ever seen. Every startup out there is a Gen AI startup, and every company out there is doing something in Gen AI, right? I see competition evolving in a couple of places. First and foremost, on the foundation model layer, the competition is more or less settled. Like it's really the top three players who are vying for some level of dominance, but really that's become a commodity layer. As strange as it is to say that after spending $10+ billion each, it's the closed model players and Meta really are the ones that are out there. And of course, there are a few other players who are vying with their own like specialized layers. But that layer is settled. It's really the middleware layer and the application layer that there is a lot of competition. And the real competition is between cloud service providers and maybe do-it-yourself teams who are trying to figure out build versus buy decisions. And they're also trying to figure out, like, should they buy tools and then they build applications on top, or should they buy fully formed applications? And today what we see in the market is it depends on what applications you're talking about. If your applications are more or less domain agnostic, for example, you want to do a marketing use case, or you want to do a legal use case, or you want to do say HR use case, or you want to do a copy editing use case, those are things that are mostly domain agnostic, for which most of the players are going towards applications that they can just buy off the shelf. It's the domain specific applications where people are still evolving and the competition is wide open.
Okay, so let's move on to open source versus proprietary. Where does Articulate position itself in this spectrum, and why?
So we are big proponents of open source. And in fact, we are great partners of open source software as well. Like we partner with Meta on their Llama launch and a lot of other players. And we believe that open source is fundamentally required to make sure that the community as a whole evolves in a safe way. What I mean by that is if it was just left to the closed source providers, whether it was just OpenAI or Anthropic or Google, we would have never gotten to the competitive state that we are in today, where the research is pretty much open sourced if you have to build a large model of any size, you can pretty much go do that because they open source their research, not necessarily just their models. That's a lot more valuable. And the other thing that it enables is the community and the ecosystem to actually go much, much faster. Like you can argue that a deep sea could have never happened if Llama had never open sourced their models. Right? So, or Meta had never open sourced not only their models, but also their research. Same thing can be claimed about Mistral never happening without Meta. Right? And those are kinds of things that like enable the overall ecosystem to be more robust rather than concentrating power only to a few players. And it also makes sure that everybody is on each other's keeps each other's on like honest.
Thanks.
What would you say are the most common misconceptions enterprise customers have about implementing Gen AI? I know you've been talking a lot about data. And then how have you helping customers measure ROI from their Gen AI investments, particularly for use cases that might not have like direct financial returns?
Got it. So first and foremost, we like your previous question of how has my experience actually shaped what we do at Articulate. One of the main things we do is we always start with ROI. And if a customer is unable to clearly define ROI and clearly figure out what they're going to measure, that's the first thing we help our customers with. Because without that, doing a technology deployment doesn't really go anywhere. That's number one. But the second thing is the biggest misconception people seem to have even today is that a model, whatever they're choosing, is going to get them to their outcome. And it is really thinking about a model as just the tip of the iceberg and thinking about all the other things that have to be put in place before they can take things to production, which is still not quite completely understood. Some of the large players understand it. However, many enterprises fall into this trap of, okay, let us just go do it ourselves and then end up getting blocked 60-70% of the way there. Right? And our job is really to get them unblocked from that 70% to the 100%.
Okay, so Arun, Articulate has backing from Intel, of course, Digital Bridge, a few other venture capital firms. How does this investor base influence your strategic direction?
Actually, they more than influencing, they help a great deal because they help us like keep focused on the things that add value, and also help open doors for us in terms of which industries we walk into. Right. So today you can think of Articulate at a Series A startup being able to punch way above our weight in multiple industries thanks to our investor base across. Say whether it's manufacturing or energy or automotive or aerospace or telecommunications. Right? That is important. And the other thing that's also important is to make sure that they are the ones helping us open doors in different regions, even in different geographies. Right? So we are in Japan, in Korea, in Brazil, and all of these places. Really, it's our investor base that are anchored to help us grow.
Thanks.
How do you view the current pace of AI innovation? You were talking, before about like how you start and how you've kind of been developing this technology for a while through the different companies you've been in. And so how do you view the pace right now, and what developments do you think will have the most significant impact on enterprises in the next 2 to 3 years? And I know I'm piling on the questions here, but what industries or use cases do you believe will see the most transformative impact from Gen AI in the next few years?
So I think as a researcher at heart, I feel like a kid in a candy store. There's almost no day that goes by where there's not a cool paper to read or a cool piece of result to go look at. As a business person, as somebody who has to think about resilience and longevity for what we are building, it's also both exciting and I would say deeply troubling. The reason for that is pretty much anything you build, if it's only a feature, you can be guaranteed that within a few days to a few weeks, that's going to become either superseded by somebody else's feature or the feature becomes table stakes, meaning whatever you delighted your customers with, in a matter of weeks, it becomes table stakes that the customer would expect, just as a matter of course. It used to take at least a few years before that happens in the tech cycles. These days, especially in the AI world, it's a matter of weeks. And so that means that you have to constantly not only keep building, but constantly keep delivering value at scale. And so the notion of getting to steady state is not something that exists. So you just need to get used to the steady state of constantly building and rebuilding and continuing to scale, right? That's one thing. On the other side of the story, the expectations from the customers in some ways are through the roof, but in some ways they also understand that these technologies are moving very fast. So they're willing to accept things that may not necessarily be completely fully baked. So even enterprises that have a very high barrier to risk, they have very low risk appetite, and they usually wouldn't try anything, are totally fine trying things new as they go forward, because they're also realizing that these things are moving very fast. So that's both an opportunity and a challenge, right? And your other question of where do we see these things going, we're seeing more and more adoption at a rate and pace in industries that are traditionally slow moving go very, very fast. Like, I'm talking manufacturing industries, I'm talking say oil and gas or aerospace or defense, where people typically are very risk averse. Usually they would be the ones who would come way after the technology is fully mature. Today they're seeing an opportunity to completely leapfrog themselves. And across the board, you can see industries and leaders expecting their teams to move fast. And it's not just about, hey, this is a cool piece of technology. It's about really adding value. They're asking questions about, how do I put this in production? How do I make sure that this continues to add value to me? Which is a super exciting time to be, especially trying to build a business in a world where everybody wants that technology.
Well said. So thank you for being on our podcast. We're going to wrap it up now. Our viewers, you can see our podcast on YouTube, Ion Tech, or on Informa Tech Target's news pages. And Arun, good luck with Articulate, and appreciate your being here.
Shaun and Esther, thank you so much. Thanks a lot for having
Thank
me.
you so much.
Thanks. To hear the full audio podcast, please go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, TuneIn, Podbean, and other popular podcast platforms.